that says public servants should go to Washington to serve, not to cash in.
Hey, I like that. What is that?
Hello, country, don't you know?
In 5 months in 1992, the people of the United States of America began a grassroots movement that confounded conventional wisdom and shook the political establishments in Washington to its core. By gathering petitions and placing in nomination the name of Ross Perot in all 50 states. The cynics and the spin doctors tried to portray it as the act of a self-willed billionaire trying to buy the election for the most important job in the world.
You may have heard this week that at the highest levels in our country, the word has gone out that this is obscene. I am buying the presidency. Now, I want you to hear my reply in plain Texas talk to them. I looked them in the eye and says, that's right, I'm buying it for the people of the United States because they can't afford it.
In truth, it was the resounding call of you, the American people, speaking with one voice, standing together, united, to make a difference, and starting to take your country back. And you called your movement, United We Stand. It was the beginning, but the challenge remains unanswered. We Americans still need a plan to show us how to take our country back and how to make the hard choices that lie ahead.
The total national debt was only $1 trillion in 1980 when President Reagan took office. It is now $4 trillion. Maybe it was voodoo economics. Whatever it was, we are now in deep voodoo, I'll tell you that.
Okay. America, the greatest nation in the history of the world, now stands at the moment of its greatest peril. In June 1992, 1 month alone, 117,000 more Americans were thrown out of work. People are working longer and harder hours to accomplish less. With nearly an 8% national unemployment rate, those who are working for less than 10 years ago. In 1980, the average hourly wage for American workers was $8.61. By 1990, that same worker made $7.71 an hour. And by 1990, the percentage of those who found it difficult to make ends meet rose to 65% of all American households. We are adding $1 billion to the federal deficit every 24 hours. And at current rates, our federal deficit could approach $8 trillion by the year 2000, if we can continue to make payments on the interest. In fact, if you took a map of the United States and took out all the income tax from all the states west of the Mississippi, that's what it takes every year just to pay the interest on the national debt. Yet, in 1993, the U.S. government plans to spend another $214 billion just to pay the interest on our debt. It's a fact that today the poverty level in the United States for children is over 20%, more than twice as high as Canada or Australia, 8 times higher than Germany, 22 times higher than Sweden. With our tax dollars, our Congress and executive branches continue to add on more indebtedness, $330 billion more in 1992 alone, while the balanced budget amendment goes ignored. In his book, Ross Perot offers a graphic illustration of how difficult it is to retire just 1992's deficit, $330 billion. If you shut down the Defense Department, the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, it wouldn't be enough to erase the $330 billion. Seize all the profits from all the Fortune 500 companies, and you'd get less than half. Shut down all the schools in the U.S., and you'd get just $330 billion. And for the least desirable option, raising taxes, In order to eliminate the $330 billion we're talking about, you'd have to double everyone's personal income tax. But that's just for 1 year. That doesn't even touch the $4 trillion we already owe. Unless this spiral of excess is checked, we may be headed for a major depression of historical proportions. Not just for the nation, but for the entire world. In 1990, President George Bush broke his pledge of no new taxes and made a pact with the Democratic Congress to raise taxes by a record-setting $166 billion. The seeming intent that the money would go toward balancing the federal budget. But there were secrets in their budget agreement that neither party revealed to the American people. Instead of bringing the deficit under control, they allocated an additional $304 billion in spending, another $1.83 in additional expenditures for every $1 in taxes, with nothing going toward retiring the debt. This is not an exception, but a symptom of an ailing system of tax and spend economics.
Now, the folks in Congress and the White House, in my judgment, are not villains on this whole economic situation. They just don't know what to do. Most of them are either lawyers or career politicians. They don't understand business, so they just stand there frozen, worrying about their images, taking polls, bouncing personal checks, and raising money from foreign lobbyists as the economy deteriorates. I feel as owners of this country, if we're going anywhere, you've got to send them a message. You work for us, we don't work for you. Under the Constitution, you are our servants. Grow up. Work as a team. Serve the people. Solve the problem. Move on to the next one. Build a better country and stop throwing away money we don't have.
Before 1970, the standard of living for the average American doubled, improved by 2 every generation and a half. Now, the expectation for the standard of living doubling is 1 in 12 generations, an event we will not see again in our lifetime or our children's lifetimes. America is now viewed as a declining economic power. Government spending has risen to represent more than 25% of our gross national product. We as a nation and a government are head over heels in debt. Yet, in 1991, the United States Senate voted itself a 23% pay raise. The ugly truth is financing campaigns has gotten so expensive, our politicians spend most of their time raising campaign funds, mostly from political action committees and foreign lobbyists. Influence peddling for congressional votes has become so rampant that our elected officials forget to listen to the people who hired them in the first place. Us. It's not unusual for people to leave a government post one day and show up the next, lobbying the very people they used to work with.
I love the message coming from both parties. Is, can we buy your votes with your money this year? And by the way, we'd like to borrow $400 billion of your children's money this year. Now, of course, we and our children will have to pay it all back with interest, but that comes later, right? After the election. Your first reaction is, how dumb do they think we are? Oh, wait a minute. It's worked for years. Who knows? Maybe it'll work again.
Last election, 96% of the Congress was re-elected. This time, over 28% of the incumbents have already lost their primaries or retired from office. Because we sent them a message.
It's time to pick up a shovel and go clean out the barn.
If there's going to be a change in this government, there's only one way. With hard work and dedication, make America stronger tomorrow than it is today. If we do it ourselves, if we take our country back.
It just doesn't seem that our politicians care.
I think there's a logjam in Washington right now. I mean, you can't get anything done.
The country is too special interest-oriented. They've forgotten the middle class, which is all of us right here. And we have not been represented properly.
The least he can do, and I'll settle for the least, is that it will tell those people up in Washington that the people still run this country. And we can put in there who we want.
We have to fix it. You cannot just go vote on November, send some poor devil up there and go home. You're going to have to get in the ring, stay in the ring, and act like you own this country. Our founders created a government that came from us. Please listen carefully to this. We now have a government that comes at us. The process has reversed itself.
The Constitution of the United States begins with the pronoun we. We, the people of the United States of America. We created that Constitution. We created Congress. We created our bureaucracy. They work for us, not the other way around. So before we can hope to face up to any of the challenges before us, we have to restore both the intent and meaning of our own Constitution, to take back control of the government that has been taken from us, and make some sweeping changes in our political system. The Perot Plan carefully outlines definitive changes that can be made, beginning in the way our officials are elected, including limiting campaign contributions from any one source to a flat fee of $1,000. This would eliminate influences from special interests and would lead to step 2, curbing political action committees or PACs who in 1990 alone made over $150 million in campaign contributions to our office holders. The Perot Plan would give the Federal Election Commission real teeth, including the ability to criminally prosecute election fraud, change the way we hold elections by shortening campaign seasons, and eliminate the filter of the Electoral College, return to electing candidates by a simple majority rule of the popular vote of the people.
If you have time when you go home tonight, reread what happened to the people who signed the Declaration of Independence. They suffered terribly. They sacrificed as much or more than the people who've gone on the battlefield. They did it for us, to give us a government of the people, by the people, for the people, and as long as it's in your hands, it will not perish from the earth. God bless you all. Thank you.
The Perot Plan moves forward to reinstill a system of public trust in public servants by reforming campaign laws and lobbying laws, by tightening laws for prompt and full disclosure, rewriting foreign agency laws and lobbying laws to close the loopholes on lobbying in government, establish laws forbidding any former office holder, president, cabinet official, staff, or member of Congress to hold lobbying positions for 5 years after their term in office, draft tough ethics codes for any private citizen serving as advisors to foreign governments.
Now, let me just net it out to you. It costs the taxpayer several $100,000 every time the vice president goes to play golf, the way we fly him now. Here's my advice. Let him, let everybody else that's up here, go to the airport, get in line, lose their luggage, eat a bad meal, and get a taste of real life.
The Perot Plan includes streamlining both the executive and legislative branches of the government, including slashing the 89th Wing of the Air Force set in place just to provide special transportation for our public officials, encouraging government officials to be more responsive to the people, giving our officials, including cabinet officials, the proper tools to do their jobs effectively, cutting bloated White House and executive branch staffs, slashing Congress's $2.8 billion operational budget, instituting initiatives requiring the return of all excess campaign funds to the U.S. Treasury, and a reorganization of Congress to eliminate many unnecessary committees and subcommittees that waste time and cost money.
We've got to have, using television, an electronic town hall where we explain each of these issues we're talking about today in great detail to you. And with the current technology we have today, you can respond by congressional district and send a laser-like signal to every congressman in Washington about what you want. Has a way of clearing their heads. You just wire around the special interest.
With health costs, insurance, kids' education, I never have anything left over for savings, ever.
What has made me angry before and dissatisfied is that I don't feel that the president or that the congressmen represent me or anyone I know.
I learned about government from my civics teachers, and I never ever saw any governmental process since I was old enough to vote that even resembled, what I was taught in elementary school.
What's going on here in the United States is tragic.
For more than a decade, the U.S. economy has been pulled apart from two different directions: Trickle-down economics from the Reagan and Bush administrations, tax and spend from the Democrat Congress. The Democrats admit their policies no longer work, yet commandeer more money for more taxes and higher debt. The Republicans in the executive cling to their discredited economic theory and offer no program at all. The time has come when we Americans can no longer afford to let either party's failed economic ideologies dictate our country's future course.
My point is nobody's keeping books. If you've ever been around a bankrupt company, sooner or later everybody kind of quits keeping books because the numbers look so bad. I think that may be where we are.
As an indication of just how severe government bloat has become, current trends and new statistics now indicate that more people now hold government jobs than currently work in our nation's industries. Whether you're running a family or a business, if you can't pay your bills, you either have to get a raise or start cutting back on necessities. There's no other way around it. If we're going to create an America that pays its way once again, we need to lay out our choices and give our elected officials no place to hide. In a detailed program of economic recovery, Ross Perot recommends, first, cutting discretionary government spending, including requiring a 15% budget cut in all areas, 5% to trim back outdated programs such as rural electrification, and require an additional 10% for across-the-board departmental cuts. It goes on to emphasize empowering our president to enact the line-item veto, a power requested by the last 5 presidents, a power 43 state governors already have. Next, a real deficit reduction package enacted into an enforceable law, followed by the elimination of tax favors and protective tariffs to industries that don't need them, and cutting wasteful farm subsidies for agricultural industry giants. A paring down of the defense budget to meet its mission, including the elimination of some Cold War relics from the budget. Next, America's allies in Europe and Japan need to pay their fair share of the defense burden. Right now, we pay nearly $300 billion toward the shared military security burden, while the countries who benefit most from it are paying less than $35 billion. There can also be no more subsidizing of the rich. We've got to set a reasonable tax base. As of now, 80% of the income in the U.S. is in the hands of 20% of the population, so they must pay their fair share. And very importantly, is the need to bring entitlement costs under control. Entitlements constitute the biggest challenge to America's balanced budget. Every year, entitlements alone consume 50% of the federal budget. These are services that must be provided, that every American needs to feel secure in their future, in their country, in their lives. Yet the costs have escalated out of control, in part because the benefits packages are misapportioned. Often the rich benefit from entitlement programs more easily than the poor. Under the Perot plan, entitlements would be restructured, including income taxes on Social Security benefits over $25,000, cuts of cost of living adjustments or COLAs by 1/3, and a realignment of health care benefits to make them both fairer and more affordable for everyone. The Perot plan for balancing our budget also includes specified taxes on tobacco and gasoline, improved methods of IRS collections, especially on foreign corporations, and a simplified tax code that anyone can understand and comply with. Ultimately, the Perot plan challenges us with a question and an answer. Can we change the damage done to our economy? The answer is absolutely yes. By taking steps like the ones outlined here, we can save more than $750 billion over 5 years and have a $10 billion surplus in the 6th year. But to do that requires decisions and sacrifice. We have the power in our hands to make the changes, study the facts, vote our convictions, become a part of the change. We are the owners of this country. Individually, our voice may never be heard. Together, standing as one, we can change the world.
Ross Perot understands that you can't limit your focus to one segment of the country.
I think that he says what he really thinks, not what he thinks you want to hear.
He visited the black community, the Hispanic community, and the Asian American community in Los Angeles. A surprise visit with no fanfare, just Ross Perot and the people.
Made in the USA. Once it was said with pride, with the knowledge that we set the world standard for excellence, for innovation, for being first. We can be again. The integrated circuit was invented and developed in the US, yet today 9 out of 10 are produced in other countries. The difference? An attitude toward the development and promotion of our growth industries. There is nothing that can stop us from returning to our position as the most productive nation on earth, from producing real wealth, of creating jobs for our people. Today, more than ever, America is up against fierce competition. Industrious people who know how to work, how to finance their businesses, and how to use government to promote their growing industries. America once showed them the way, and we can lead the way once again. But to do so, we're going to need a government leadership that's willing to put America back to work. The next administration is going to have to move immediately to promote and stimulate thousands or even hundreds of thousands of new businesses. That means creating new jobs. Perhaps surprisingly, the majority of new jobs in America don't come from the largest corporations, but from small businesses. In order to help those small businesses grow, our government must encourage freeing up credit for small, responsible, credit-starved companies, stimulating investment through tax incentives, eliminate capital gains taxes for small business investments, and the establishment of mentor programs that teach new businesses how to survive. The Perot Plan for an America that prospers includes targeting growth industries and giving them the support they need to compete in the world marketplace. This means getting rid of our adversarial relationship between government and business and putting government on the side of jobs and growth. American savings are at a low among the leading nations of the world, 4% compared to 10% for that of Germany and 18% for the average Japanese. The Perot Plan provides for a strong savings incentive program for American families and a sound government support system that would encourage private investments with investment tax credits for developing businesses, research and development tax credits, tax breaks for long-term capital gains, and the development of a solid policy not only of environmental protection, but also of development of environmental industries. To have the right kind of environmental program, America must begin to think 100 years down the road, not just 1 or 2. It only makes economic sense. Pollution equals waste, and the only effective way to convert waste is to recycle it. That means supporting business strategies for sustaining environmental economic development. America also needs to develop a long-term energy policy that has up to now been so clearly missing. Dependence on foreign oil has vaulted to 50% of our consumption and helped turn the United States into the largest single debtor nation in the history of the world. To climb out of this, we've got to strive for better balance by developing our own energy strengths in other areas, coal, natural gas, and by developing renewable fuel sources such as solar, hydroelectric, biomass, and geothermal. The American Dream. In 3 short words, it encompasses the hopes and aspirations of all the people on Earth. Yet a dream denied can shrivel and die like a raisin in the sun. Too many of America's cities are among the crime capitals of the world. We spend more on health care than any other major nation in the world, with less to show for it. And America, once living standard of excellence for the world, sees its inner cities in decay. We need an America that works. The Perot Plan starts with specific programs for the education of our young, including reforms for the educational system in America, including good preschool training to help the tens of thousands of children who enter school without the necessary learning skills even to communicate properly. Federal funds for programs that work, ones that really get to the core of our children's needs. The Perot education package includes restoring autonomy and accountability to local schools and school boards. By the same token, it calls for establishing a national standard of measurement for education, making learning our first priority, and treating our teachers as professionals. The plan to restore the American dream continues with the second rung on the ladder, the restoration of our inner cities, with heavy emphasis on enterprise zones to create viable inner city jobs. It continues with creative new programs to diminish crime and drug abuse. And finally, a detailed 8-point program to make America's healthcare the finest and most responsive in the world, including setting a national health policy, establishing a forum for principles on reform, and allowing states to establish pilot programs. Once we've restored a strong America at home, we can work to be a world leader abroad in the right way by establishing fair trade practices for all countries, especially our own, curbing imperialistic tendencies by anyone, and shutting down nuclear warheads by everyone. For America to lead the world in that kind of way, it requires vision. It requires a president who can see past the moment, and an electorate willing to take the responsibility for making the hard choices necessary to bring about these changes. The power is in your hands. It always has been. The founders of this great country knew that, and we all know it now. You can change our country. You can pass on the American dream to our children. You can change the world. The whole world awaits your decision.